Okay, so I kind of abruptly ended that last one, but where we were is I was saying we've got our plinth done here and our pedestal done, and we could actually make this a group and then continue on and do the rest of this geometry. And then that way the group is separate from, this group is separate from this other part. Actually, that doesn't make much sense. I'm not going to do that. But this shows you it's at this point where you could start making groups of things. What I'm going to do is just keep going up here with the shaft, and it looks like there's a little bit of a taper. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw it straight up and then go over by however much it looks like it's tapering. It looks like maybe 5/8, and then come back down. And that way I know for sure that I've got an angle and that this thing has been drawn on the ground. And that's important. We'll lift all of this stuff up off the ground shortly, but right now I'll just get rid of that one line. You can see as I lose the image, you can see the geometry is still there left behind. So that's good. But I'll put the image back on so we can see it. Maybe I'll reference this over here to see what the detail is like. So it looks like it pops out and goes up, over and up. And the other thing you can do, you could actually model it right from here, the large one, put that in a group, and then after you've modeled it, scale it down to fit this size. You don't have to go off of this tiny one, but all I've got from this whole thing is this, so that's fine. I can just use this little one to work it out. And you know your design already, so again, let's look at that. It looks like it shoots out from here. Okay, so let's measure up from here. Looks like that's going to be about 1 7/8 of an inch, and okay, and so that it starts to go about 1 inch there. So let's just draw a line. Looks like it's going to go up to about here and back. And we'll just finish that in. Okay, so I'm just using geometry and connecting things. I'm just making connections and just trying to be smart about it here. So that's looks like 3/4 of an inch up and back. All right, and then this is probably going to want to align with something down below, but looks like we'll just do 7/8 of an inch for now, and then I don't know, maybe this is 2 inches. It looks like it might be 2 inches, and we come over to make sense, 2x4, and there we go. Okay, so at this point I have the profile. What I'm going to do now is actually start to get rid of these lines in here, and you'll see why in a second. In fact, I'll show you what happens if you don't. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and select them all and put them in a group for now. Okay, and on the outside of this group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, remember this base was 13 inches, so I'm going to draw a 13-inch square. So let's go 6.5, 13. I just want to make sure I was doing this. Yeah, good. So 6.5 straight up, because I was on the blue axis. This is on the red axis, 13. And I'm just typing in numbers, and that way I know for sure. This way I'm going on the blue axis, I'm going in that direction, so I'm going to type in 13. And then you'll see I'm below the image, so I could come over here and I could turn the image off, and then come over and align up here and align up there, and there we go. Or I could have just done this, right, to see what's going on. Okay, so I'm actually going to turn the image off just to make it easy to see what's going on here. Okay, so at this point, this geometry is outside of this group. These two things are not, this geometry is not touching this geometry. And I need them to be touching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this geometry and I'm going to cut it. Not copy it, I'm going to cut it. That's Command X, right? So Command X, it's cut. Now I'm going to come back in here, go inside this group, and I want to place that geometry right back where it was in its location, only inside the group. So I'm just going to come up to Edit, Paste in Place, and there it is. And now all of this geometry is touching, and that's what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Follow Me tool. I'm going to grab this top here, and I'm going to grab the Follow Me tool, and then I'm going to touch on this geometry, and boom, I have this. Well, now that's great, but I didn't get anything else. So let me undo that. And that's because all of this was connected, but this stuff wasn't. That's why I come in with the Erase tool and get rid of all this extra stuff. So that's all one big piece of geometry. And while I'm at it, I should explain to you why why is one surface blue and the other surface is white? Well, white surfaces, or whatever the default color is, whatever you make it, that's the color, the face color. That's the outside of the object. You notice when we had a little cube, and I broke open the cube, you could see that inside. See here, the cube is white, and if I open the cube, you can see the inside is blue. Blue is the side, it's the color to indicate the back side of a face. So blue is actually not something you want to see ever. It's the back side of your surface. Now the surface is infinitely thin, so it's pretty easy. You touch on the back surface, and you come around, you can see that the front surface has been selected. I mean, it's a super thin thing. It doesn't have any thickness, but just like a piece of paper is super thin, there's a front side to a paper and a back side. You really don't want to be showing the back side of the paper or the back side of your face anywhere in the model. So we just get rid of that. So what you can do is you can select anything that looks blue, and you can right click and say reverse faces, and there it is. Okay, now sometimes it doesn't matter when you're extruding stuff. It can be blue, but when you start to extrude it or push pull, it corrects itself, but in some cases it doesn't. Okay, so here I'm just going to select, go back in the group. I'm going to select this surface because it knows, by selecting the surface, it knows that I'm selecting this entire path. And then I take my Follow Me tool, and I touch on the geometry that I want to turn into something 3D, and I click, and it pushes that geometry right around that path, and now I have myself a nice nice column here. Alright, so let's click out of that geometry, turn the image back on, the visibility of the image back on. Oops, there we go. So here it is. And you can see that half of it is in the page and the other half of it's below the page. That's fine. Okay, so at this point, it's just a group. I could ungroup it and then turn it into a component, or I could just turn it into a component right now. First thing I do is just want to make sure that it's looking okay. I don't care that the bottom is hollow because we're never going to see the bottom. I do want to make sure the top has a top, and yes it does, so it's looking fine. At this point, let's turn this column, this group, into a component. So I'll right click, say Make Component, and now it's a component. Sometimes, oddly enough, SketchUp does not give you options when you make a component. See, notice how before, when we made a component, it came up with this great dialog box that let us name the component. Well, sometimes I find if you make a component out of a group, it doesn't let you do that. So I'm actually going to undo that. I'm actually going to explode this group, and while it's all still selected, I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to say Make Component, just so we can go through this again here. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it Column. I don't need to glue it to anything. That just means it'll always glue to a particular surface. I don't need to set any component axes for this. We don't need to really know about this stuff right now. Type, none of that stuff. All I need to do here is give it a name, make sure that replace selection with component is checked, and hit create. And now we have a component, and there's only one of these components in the whole model. Pretty soon there's going to be two. But what I'm going to do is I'm only going to build half of this fruit stand, and then I'm going to make a component out of it and mirror it. So we only really need to build part of this whole thing, and then we'll mirror it and we'll get the rest of it. Else, in the end, it'll all look like it's one thing. Okay, so I'm going to do, again, I'm just doing this visually, but you guys know your models better, so you'll know what the measurements are. It looks to me like the inside opening here, we'll call it maybe 4'8" or something like that. Well, let's just go to the center. So maybe 2'4". So if I come over by 2 foot 4 inches, now I've got a little dot there, and that's the center of my entire model, of this entire design. You can turn off the image, you can see that little dot better, right? And I'm building this thing on the ground, and I'll tilt it up later, okay? So let's turn the image back on. If I want, I could actually just draw a line so that I can see it. So it's a little bit, visually a little bit easier for me to picture what I need to build and what I don't want to build. Okay, so great, here we are. The next thing we probably want to do is to build this beam. Now to do that, it might be easier to build it over here. It looks like we've got the profile of the beam. So let's just do a quick measure visually here. That looks like it's going to be 10.5 by 4.5. Okay, so 10.5 by 4.5. We can do that. We can just make a little rectangle. We can do it anywhere. Might as well just do it 10.5, comma 4.5, and there we have the beam. And so we can take this beam, and we know that this beam is going to be, let's see, about looks like 4 feet long. So we'll extrude this thing up 4 feet, and I'm going to make this a group. And now I need to rotate this beam down and put it into place here. So I'm going to use the rotate tool, which is right here on the left. Q is the keyboard shortcut. Take the rotate tool, and you'll notice as I pass over the geometry that it changes. It adjusts for whatever the face is that I'm touching. Now if I want it to stay on a certain face without moving, I can lock it onto a face by holding down Shift. So I'm holding down Shift now, and it's locking it in position. So here I am, I'm in a good spot. I'm going to click, and then I come out to another end and click, and now I can rotate it and click. Okay, so now it's laying down on the ground. Now I'm going to click, click, rotate it, click. And let's do that again. Click, click, rotate, click. And let's take the move tool, and we can see that it's lined up with the shaft correctly, so that's good. So I'm going to take this corner right here, and I'm actually going to stick it right at this corner here. You say, well, that's not actually how it works. Well, that's just a way to know for sure that it's lining up. But then I can take that corner, click, and start moving in the direction I need until it snaps onto the green axes. I can hold down Shift to make sure it doesn't go all over the place on me. And if I just inference this corner and click, I'll know that it's sticking right to where I need it. I'll undo that. I'll do it another way. I could grab this, click, and I could just move out here, and then visually I could see where it's going to be, and then click. But there it is. I have my beam. Nice beam. Okay, then it looks like I've got some stuff going on here that I need to design, I need to model. Let's see if we can get a better view of it in the larger image. Oops, computer is slowing down on me here. Okay, there it is. So it looks like it comes out a little ways, chamfers up, then goes up again, and then we've got this part of the cornice. Okay, great. So right now we've already done part of the entablature. We've got the architrave and the frieze, so sort of one thing. There is a line there. I'm not sure what that is, so I'm just going to leave it as a solid for now. But it does look like maybe I went up a little too far with my beam. I was measuring it in the section, and it looks a little bit different here in the now that I'm looking at it in the elevation. So I can actually just modify that. I can just go into my group, and I could push-pull this down just a little bit. And I'm going to push-pull it down by 1.5 inches. Very good. And now I'm back out. Alright, so let's just draw on this surface now. Let's just speed this along, and right now I'm just going to start to just kind of trace things, perhaps a little bit more at random than I would suggest you do. And we'll go along and make inferences. Okay, now you say, one of the issues here with what I just did was if I pull that out, it's only going to be in one direction. So watch what happens. If I extrude this, the front of it is flat, right? That's no good. So what I want to do is I actually want to cut this off right here, and I want to get rid of the rest of this geometry, right? And I don't need this. Oh, it looks like I actually made this beam too long. Let's just take care of that real quick here. There, because we're only modeling half of this thing. We don't need to model more than is necessary. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I've got this geometry. What I want to do, I believe what I want to see here is I want it to go all the way around the roof. Okay. So I want to have a path go from here and then stop and move back, and then that that geometry will be consistent. I'm going to stop it here for a second.